So, Nigel, we start every interview we do with the simple thing. I mean, you've done so much, obviously, in wrestling, man. If you could sum everything you've done up in one word, how would you describe it?
Unexpected, certainly. A lot of the highs and the lows I never could have thought of starting out. And in some ways, as I said, in some ways that's good. Some ways it's bad. But I do genuinely feel very blessed with the career that I've had, certainly. Had to take a step back a few times, but some of the things I got to do, just absolutely incredible. And I'll always feel very, very grateful that I got a chance to do them.
Absolutely. I mean, Jordan, do you know what I mean? He's an absolute legend, right? Let's be honest.
Do you know what? I don't think, well, legend is a word that we can put, but probably one of the best that Britain has ever had.
If we can get Bryan Danielson to agree with you, then we'll be getting somewhere. But
I'm sure that name will pop up quite a lot in this chat, so we've got a lot to talk about. Liam, do you want to kick it off with the first question, mate?
Absolutely, man. I want to talk, obviously, about All In 2024. Talk about, obviously, coming back and the whole process.
Oftentimes in professional wrestling, a lot of these sort of things come when opportunity present themselves, you know what I mean? And we had that moment, Zach and I, in Wembley the year prior, and I don't think any of us had thought we were going to get that sort of a reaction. It was a visceral wave of euphoria that just hit when he and I were standing across from each other in the ring. So the idea obviously presented itself then. And thanks for Tony, sort of brokering, negotiating the deal. We were able to do it there at the O2 Arena. So it was, I would say we had about a month or so. Once internally it was ready to go, and we were, guaranteed we were going to have the match to sort of put the finishing touches mentally to be ready for it, for me at least.
Absolutely. John, over to you, bro.
And that must have been like one of the biggest pops, and it must have been a surreal moment for yourself, obviously in your home country.
The first time at Wembley with Zach, or the match itself?
The match itself.
Yeah, they were very, very, I guess I use the word kind, being self-deprecating as us Brits usually are. But, from the moment we came out there, and every moment of the match, the crowd were just super into it. And that helps so much, with a match when people care about the characters and stuff like that. And to have the opportunity to have Johnny Saint and Marty Jones at ringside as well, two of the, you used the word legends early on. Certainly, they don't come much bigger than those two guys. And to have them sitting there watching at ringside was a real dream come true, a moment I'll take with me to the grave, for sure.
Absolutely. What were it like after, do you know what I mean, coming back through the curtain?
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice. The thing with professional wrestling, certainly for me, and I would imagine for most guys as well, is you're always in your head afterwards. And when you get to the back, you always go, if I could have just done that, and I didn't do that right, and et cetera, et cetera. So you're always kind of going over things in your head. And sometimes that takes away from, the ability to be present and just enjoy what you've just had a chance to experience. So there was some of that going on, certainly. But once we got to the back and they took some photos with all of us together, Chris Hero and Colt Cabana, who were obviously heavily influenced by both of those guys, Marty Jones and Johnny Saint, to have us all together and have a good chat and the photos and whatever else. And, Bryan Danielson begged to be a part of it as well. That's just how he is.
Absolutely. John, over to you, bro.
So obviously since 2024, you've popped up in AEW. You've not just done commentary. You've had a fair few matches. Is this something that we can see more of, like you in the ring? Would you love to do like a full year
of wrestling?
Yeah.
No. Good Lord, no. My full years of wrestling are long gone. I mean, good Lord, you could have asked me probably 10 years ago, and I would have said the ship has truly sailed when it comes to me even wrestling again. But I guess, truthfully, without AEW and specifically Tony Khan, I never would have got this opportunity again. So, I don't think there's any benefit to me, wrestling a full-time schedule. sort of part-time schedule that I'm currently on. You know, if an opportunity presents itself and it makes sense from a storyline perspective, then I'll do it. I love doing it. You know, but yeah, not full time. There's too many guys on the roster anyway, younger guys, you know, who deserve more of those spots than me. But if I can add a little bit of flavour, a little bit of spice to what else is going on with my experience and the fact that they see me on TV every week as a commentator, then I think I can. That's the best asset, the best way they can use me.
Over to you, Lynn.
Absolutely. I want to talk about Magic, man, because this is something I'm passionate about. How did this all come about?
Good Lord. Well, I first saw a magic trick when I was about, good Lord, that would have been about 16 or 17 years old. And a friend of mine had a couple of tricks that he did. And I was like, good Lord, I ended up paying him £5 to teach me how to do it. It was a very simple sort of double lift sort of scenario, real sort of beginner stuff. But it sort of got me interested in it. But it wasn't really, I mean, like most things you do in your life, you really ultimately do it for girls, right? You know, and so there was a time in my life where I was single and trying to impress girls, and magic was always a way of doing that, a conduit. You know, it's crazy, isn't it, when you think about it? I don't know if it's still the same now. You know, I've been in a relationship for 7 years now, so the idea of dating is completely alien to me. But the idea that, you know, when it comes to dating, guys are always the one that have to try to be interesting and different and entertain the girl. You know, you've got to make money and you've got to be interesting and you've got to have fun things to say and all these sort of things. But it doesn't seem to work the other way around. You know what I mean? There's not not a lot of girls who are doing card tricks so they can impress guys. It's a different dynamic. But so that was part of the reason why I did it back then. But also when I was going to Japan and wrestling, a lot of times the sponsors would take you out after the shows, and sometimes you would be sat there at a dinner for a good 2 or 3 hours and not speaking the language at the time. It oftentimes a little bit awkward, and sometimes they bring food around that you didn't really want to eat. And so if I had a pack of cards with me, I could both entertain them and, you know, sort of show a little bit of appreciation for the food and stuff, and also avoid the types of food that I maybe didn't want to eat at the time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Stuff like that. John, over to you, bro.
So we've mentioned his name already, Bryan Danielson. I mean, he's now joining you every week on commentary. How do you feel about
that? No, he's on the other brand, isn't he? He's on a Wednesday night. I'm on a Saturday night, so never the two shall cross.
Never say never. It could be on pay-per-view.
Yes, well, that is the opportunity, I suppose. But I think deep down, Bryan is probably afraid of me. He was certainly afraid of me in the ring, but on a commentary booth, I'm just going to tear him apart, you know? And so I think he knows that. So he's probably politicking to try to avoid me, I would imagine.
Over to you, Liam.
Absolutely. So I want to talk obviously about commentary and stuff like that. I mean, how much obviously planning goes into that?
Well, it really depends who you are. People have a different style and a different way of preparing, or sometimes not preparing for it. You know, it really depends on what your role is. If you're a play-by-play guy, then your role is to drive the car, so to speak, or the train. So you need to know all the backlines, the storylines, etc., etc. You need to be prepared for the traffic, which is pitching to backstage segments and any advertisements you have to do, etc., all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of preparation that needs to be done for that. And that's, I think, arguably one of the reasons why play-by-play guys are so underestimated by the general population. You don't realize how difficult a job that is. And Excalibur is so good at doing that, seamlessly transitioning from one thing to another. People just don't realize how good he is. But in terms of being a color guy, I do a lot of prep simply because I've got a lot of good jokes I want to get in. And so I've got to write those all down. But no, it always does me good to watch back the Dynamite and the Collision from the weeks prior, have that all known down. So when, you know, the matches are happening, you can sort of find a place to put in that. And then just little funny things that you can add to it. I always believe that, as a color guy, you are talking about the action and you are trying to explain the holds, etc., etc. But you need to do a little bit more than that. I believe. I believe that you need to add a little bit of personality and your own little perspective and slant on it. If you don't have an opinion, then it can make for a little bit of a boring commentary team.
And what's obviously have you learned from Excalibur yourself?
Yeah, a lot of things for sure. Just sat alongside him and seeing how he'll take one thing and move in a different direction. But on a pay-per-view or on the occasional Dynamite when I am on there with him, he's doing the majority of that side of things. And so it's great. He just pitches me questions and I can answer them as best I can, But with Tony on the Saturday, sometimes I do a little bit more of that heavy lifting in the sense of calling B-rolls and sometimes pitching to other stuff. So the technicalities of doing play-by-play, I can take stuff that I've taken from Excalibur and also Michael Cole, who, without Michael Cole starting me as a commentator for WWE and educating me and making sure that I succeed there to the best of my abilities, none of this stuff would have happened post that. You know what I mean? So I'll always be grateful for Michael Cole for setting me up like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. John, up to you, bro.
Do you think, Nigel, that Bryan Danielson will ever get back in the ring? Because obviously, coming up to Wrestle Dream, it's going to be the one full year that he's not been in. And obviously, do you know the longer that you're out the ring, you heal a little bit? So do you think he'll come in like part-time again? Or I don't. Sporadic period, sorry.
I think the only reason he might do that is because he sees me do it, and once again, jealousy becomes a factor, and he realizes I was never as good a wrestler as Nigel when I was full-time. Now I could come back and, so I don't think so. I think he's enjoying his life with his kids. He's probably made some sort of promises to his missus in that regard, would be my guess. He doesn't want to get on the wrong side of her as well. She clearly wears the pants in the relationship. Oh man, so I don't see it happening. I think he's trying to really transition, and steal one more thing from me when it comes to commentary. So I don't see it happening.
William, over to you.
Absolutely. So I want to talk obviously about Ring of Honor and stuff like that. What's some of your favorite memories
from Ring of Honor? There's a lot, really. I mean, Ring of Honor was a company that back in the the mid 2000s all the way through to when I stopped working there, we had a real passionate vision, and everyone felt like part of that group. We weren't making a lot of money, but we felt like we were doing something different, really evolving the in-ring style, taking the influence of All Japan in the 90s and everywhere from around the professional wrestling world and sort of trying to push it in a new direction. And guys like Low-Ki and Samoa Joe and Christopher Daniels and AJ Styles were given the platform to really do stuff that you couldn't see elsewhere. Now you could make a very good argument that what was called the Ring of Honor style is now the style of professional wrestling most places all over the world, and so there's a lot of pride being part of that, and just having that blank slate or easel to create sometimes masterpieces. And I certainly wouldn't include myself in that category, but I just went back and watched Samoa Joe and Kenta Kobashi from 2005, and that's just that feeling, that energy, that it's once in a lifetime. Oftentimes, you know what I mean, to get that sort of connection. So to being part of that crew made me very proud, and just say, now it's something we all sort of hold as a badge of honor. Whenever you see someone else from those days in a different place now, you catch up and you remember the good times. I mean, I say you remember the good times. These are great times now. I don't think it's ever been any better. Certainly, speaking personally, my career's never been as good as it is right now.
Absolutely. John, over to you, bro.
I personally think, Nigel, that you have one of the best Ring of Honor title reigns in Ring of Honor history. Wouldn't you agree?
I put myself up there, certainly. I think it's hard for anyone to usurp or pass Samoa Joe as a Ring of Honor World Champion. He took that title from like I don't want to say a regional belt, but certainly after Joe's reign, it was considered like one of the top titles in the artistic sense of professional wrestling, So I think Samoa Joe will always be up there at the top, if not close to the top. And then there are certainly other people who are in that conversation. Bryan Danielson, potentially. But I think everybody brought their own different style, their own different thing to that title. With Joe, it was the prestige, the credibility. With Bryan Danielson, it was, I want to hate using that word, work rate, but because it's not really true, but it's more of a versatility in terms of having the best matches in the world against such a plethora of opponents. And then with me, it was the legacy of the injuries and pushing through and stuff like that, and beating that clam digger on more than one occasion as well. So that was a big factor.
I've just got a little list up here. I mean, 545 days. That's nothing to know. I mean, that's a really, really impressive. Let's be honest.
Yeah. No, it was a hard graft with a lot of the injuries that came along, and there was times when I thought that I might lose the title, and by hook or by crook, stayed around my waist. So yeah, it was a tough time for me. Certainly, I think there was a lot of stuff I was going through mentally as well as physically at that time.
Absolutely. So I want us to talk about that stuff. I mean, how hard is it? I mean, juggling absolutely everything, obviously wrestling, commentary, personal life. How hard is that as a whole?
Yeah, it is tough, but it's tough for everybody, right? You've got a 9-to-5 job and you're trying to raise a family and make ends meet. It's no tougher than anybody else in the world, I don't think necessarily. I mean, perhaps you might feel more pressure, and I think certainly now so more because of social media and how that sort of immediate feedback is sometimes so strong and overwhelming. So if you are in the public eye to any extent, that can make things more difficult. But I don't look at it as a cross I had to bear per se. It was a choice that I made to work in that industry, and as I said, I'll always be blessed for all the opportunities that I got. And without Gabe Sapolsky, and so many other people giving me those opportunities and believing in me, Kerry Silkin keeping the company afloat. I never would have had any of those things happen.
Absolutely. Jordan, over to you, bro.
What would you say, Nigel, that is one thing that wrestling fans will not understand about wrestling?
I guess the nuance, really. The business is so open now, far more than when I broke in. And I think WWE are doing more of that now. They're going more into sort of breaking through that fourth wall and showing you how everything's done. You know what I mean? And so it's definitely different from when I started. Yeah.
Leave over to you, mate.
I mean, like I said, wrestling's always evolving and stuff like that. But I want to obviously talk about social media and stuff like that. I mean, we know fans are quite vocal, obviously, when it comes to social media. What's your thoughts when it comes to social media and wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, it has its benefits. I did my documentary in 2012, Last of McGuinness, and were it not for social media in its relatively early days then I wouldn't have got the traction to sell as many DVDs and get the movie out to as many people and connect to as many people as I did. Without social media, arguably I wouldn't have connected with Chris Brooker, who did a documentary screening tour for me and has become one of my best friends because of it, And so a lot of people, can connect through social media. It can be a great benefit and boon to people. My mum loves looking on Facebook and seeing how all her old friends from where we grew up and what they're doing and what they're up to. And same thing I can see on Instagram, what my friends have all been doing. So that's great. But I think through the algorithm and how certainly Twitter tends towards, there's a word for it, isn't it? It's not consumption, but it's what people pay attention to. And unfortunately, as human beings, we've evolved to pay attention to, I want to say, negative things. I'm on Twitter trying to look at stuff about wrestling from AEW and looking at what people are saying, specifically the wrestlers, how they're tweeting about stuff. And half the time I have to try to scroll through everything about, whether it's, Gaza and Palestine or shootings in America or the political conflict seemingly between the left and the right in America. And it's not to say that those are important subjects, It's just that I think they can be a little bit, what's that word, overwhelming, and they can really draw you into that energy. And I'm sure the same thing is true of wrestling. I'm sure the opinions that get put out there on wrestling are equally problematic, I suppose. I think back to when I was a fan and watching SummerSlam 92 at Wembley Stadium, or we just get to see superstars when it was on. They hadn't even started Raw, I don't think, back then. But the idea of me getting upset about a wrestler losing or not getting a push or something going wrong in a match, or people they're just not as smart as they think they are, really. The complexities of running a professional wrestling show, of booking a show 52 weeks a year when there are 2 shows and there are so many people involved, and there's injuries and there's storylines and there's egos and then there's commercial interests as well. How, it's like there's so many things going on. And people like to take everything in a tiny little box and one little instance. And this happened and this happened. They shouldn't have done that. They should have done this. And it's so easy to do. It's so easy to poke fun at things and say, well, that made no sense. That's so fucking stupid. I would dare anybody that thinks they can do better to give it a shot, because it becomes a 24/7 obsession to do it, and I would never want to commit that much of my life to doing it, certainly.
And I think it's one of those things where, like, you can't please everybody, right?
No, yeah, you can't please everybody all the time, certainly, and sometimes you can't please anybody all of the time, So that's why I think you've got to just have an idea, have a mindset, a viewpoint, a direction, and stick with it no matter what. There are certain barometers of success, and again, that comes up for discussion as well. Is it the TV ratings? Is it how much merchandise you're selling? Is it pay-per-view buys? Is it how many people are buying tickets to the shows? Which of those is a better indication of success and business in 2025? I don't have the answer. I don't know if anybody does.
Neither do I. Jordan, over to you, bro.
I think AEW is having probably one of its best years in 2025. Look, within the last week, they've announced that the women's are going to have the tag titles. And then Jamie Hayter announced that she's going to be blood and guts. What do you think, in your opinion, AEW has the best women's division?
Well, it's hard for me to say because I don't watch anything else, to be honest with you. When I work for a company, that's the company I work for, and I don't really pay attention to any other wrestling that's out there other than what pops up on my social media feed. I don't really see that. So certainly it's the best in the world for me, and I think we could certainly hold it up against any other product in the world. But I'm only saying that because it's the wrestling that I see. Now, I obviously have a concept of what good professional wrestling is. And by that standard, by that barometer, yeah, AEW is the top in the world, no question for me. Watching some of those people compete, what Toni Storm did with her character in the AEW women's title. But so many other guys, Adam Page and Carl Fletcher now really coming into his stride. And so many other guys in terms of John Moxley and the vociferous reactions that he's getting from people across the board, all the way, and even with Ring of Honor as well. You've got the Ring of Honor Pure Champion Lee Moriarty, who, just recently facing Adam Page and really stepping up as well. And there's so much talent in AEW. And yeah, I mean, I've been there for 2 years now, 2.5 years, something like that. And in my time that I've been there, I just see so much talent. And every time we do a pay-per-view, I just go, fuck hell, how do we keep on doing it, right? It's really a testament, not just to the guys in the ring, but everybody else that helps behind the scenes setting up the show as well.
Yeah, over to you, Lou.
Absolutely. So I was talking to obviously a few friends in wrestling in the UK scene, and the one thing that kept coming up was the King of Europe Cup. Do you remember anything about this?
I do. I have a faint recollection of winning it. Isn't that the case? I think so. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I remember there was a young wrestler called Pac in it as well. He was in it, right? And I remember he did a moonsault to the outside and landed on the ringside on the steps or something like that. I couldn't believe that he was still walking after that. I remember wrestling Doug Williams. I may have even been in the final and having a really good match with Doug and being very, very proud of that. And then there was a lot of great talent that was on that show as well. And again, feeling very blessed to be in the tournament and then winning it as well. It was when I think I really found my stride in Ring of Honor and found my voice, if you will, as a professional wrestler. And that, I think, along with like places like 1PW, were just the beginnings of the independent scene in the UK, what will become a renaissance, if you will, for independent wrestling in the United Kingdom.
Absolutely. I'm just looking at the thing now. I mean, there's some incredible names. You mentioned it there. Obviously, Pac, obviously Rhino, Martin Stone, Matt Sydal, Jody Fleisch. There's some incredible names just there.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of talent. And again, it was much like with Ring of Honor. It was one of those times where we all felt like we were doing something that you couldn't see in the mainstream. I think the style there, that ability, that blank canvas, if you will, which is something I still feel about AEW. And I think that's why, so many of our fans really love us, because arguably, I don't know, can't speak for any other companies, I only speak for the company that I work for, but arguably it's the one place where the wrestlers really have a lot of freedom in terms of creativity, in terms of having great matches and telling great stories bell to bell.
Absolutely.
So, who would you say, Nigel, is the locker room leader for AEW?
I suppose it's different on different days. I have not been at Dynamite a lot. I couldn't really speak to Dynamite. But certainly when it comes to Collision, I think Samoa Joe still has that sort of reverence in terms of how people respect him and go to him. But there are other guys as well. I think Mark Briscoe, having been around a long time, is always one that people go to. Orange Cassidy as well. People have such respect for him. Samoa Joe to me is a lot like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Mm-hmm.
I always remember there was a match in Ring of Honor. It was Delirious against Roderick Strong, and it was a hardcore match or something like that. Anyway, halfway through the match or somewhere in there, Roderick Strong pulls Delirious off the top rope onto a guardrail. One of the guardrails from the ringside was in the middle of the ring, and I think Delirious got knocked out or something like that. Anyway, after the match, he's in the back and he's obviously suffering from some kind of head trauma, and he's walking around and he's asking people, what happened? Like was it a good match? And he couldn't remember anything that happened, which is traditionally normal. And we were all worried, and so a lot of us were trying to calm him down, say it was a fine match, everything was okay, and everything was good, and let's get you to the hospital, etc., etc. And no one was getting through to him. No one could get through to him whatsoever, and he just was constantly in this state of worry. And he just happened to walk past Samoa Joe at the time, and he just stopped Joe. Joe, it was okay, look. And Joe just goes, it was fine. And he just stopped, calmed down, and he walked off and sat down and got changed. And it was that sort of Jedi Knight ability, you know, like, these aren't the droids you're looking for, you know, like, that match was fine. That's what Joe has. It's intangible. You're born with it or you're not. And I think Joe has that ability to connect to people, and that's what happens in the ring as well. Certainly.
Yeah, awesome. William, over to you, mate.
So let's obviously talk about Tony Khan. What's obviously like as a boss?
Fantastic. Yeah, best boss I ever had, no question about it. You know, I mean, obviously a different style of leadership than when I was in AEW, but the fact that he is truly a professional wrestling fan goes a long way and helps a great deal. I mean, he always tells me back before he got into the wrestling business, when he was just a fan, he'd have a little notebook that he would sort of do fantasy booking in. And I was one of the guys that he'd like book, these sort of fantasy events at Wembley Stadium or something like that. With I forget who it was. It was one of the big Japanese stars at the time as well. Another guy threw a big lariat. So that's been fantastic. It's nice to work for a guy that loves the job that he's doing. You know, he truly does love it. And not only that, he's generous to a fault. He's kind. That's always been my experience with him. So it's been a really, really enjoyable experience to work underneath him. And he's so encouraging, you know, it's just, he loves it. And right before a show, he's so amped up. It's contagious. It gets everybody else into it.
Awesome. John, over to you, bro.
If a professional wrestling fan has never watched AEW before, what is one match that you would highly recommend them to watch?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, one of those big pay-per-view matches, certainly. I think. God, I hate you've asked me that, because I'm probably going to choose a Bryan Danielson match. Yeah, I mean, Bryan and Zack Sabre Jr. was incredible. Bryan's final year, his final countdown tour of AEW. Yeah, there's a good handful of matches in there that just stand out. But what was that one, Anarchy in the Arena? You remember that last one where they played the music at the same time? Right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. That might be something good as well for the casual wrestling fan, to see something from an artistic standpoint that just really stands out and is different, you know. But that's you could certainly choose one of those matches or any of the main events, of our pay-per-views.
I would have said Bryan and Omega.
Yeah, that's up there as well. But I mean, some of the matches that Tony Storm has had as well. Mercedes Moné is still killing it. Tekla. It goes on and on. I think you only have to watch a little bit of AEW to really see. Oh wow, this is different. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, what's a typical show day for you, Nigel?
Well, I usually get to the venue early. I'm always on the first shuttle from the hotel because I like getting in the ring beforehand and warming up. And if Lee Moriarty is there, or Alex Reynolds sometimes, or Ari Daivari, we'll get in and we'll roll around a little bit and work on new things and just sort of try and keep in ring shape. So I'll do that for a couple of hours, then pop in and see the medical team just if anything's aching and that, then have a bite to eat. And then it's down into doing the notes for the show, and that will usually take me a good 2 or 3 hours before the show in terms of writing everything down. To your point earlier, your question about making notes, there are extensive notes because I want to be as prepared as possible for when I go out there. And then it's getting ready in terms of putting on the suit and whatever else, or the Fred Perry, and doing my hair and doing my makeup and then generally speaking, we'll have a little meeting with Tony, just going over things, making sure we're on the same page and we haven't missed anything. And then I'll have a coffee with some of that mushroom stuff in it, the legal mushroom stuff, not the illegal stuff, the lion's mane and cordyceps. There we are. The man who makes a living by talking should be better with his words. But yeah. So I'll have that before I go out there, and then we've got the 2 hours of the show, or the 3 hours, or the 4 hours if it's a pay-per-view, and then afterwards it's just trying to calm your nervous system down, and get back to the hotel and get as much sleep or as little sleep with such an early flight back the next day.
Okay, John, up to you, bro.
So, with you being commentary, and then obviously now popping back up and doing sporadic appearances in the ring, is that 2 separate contracts?
No, I think it's all under the same thing. My manager and agent sort of handle all that side of things. I just sign along the dotted line. I know we sort of re-upped when it became clear that I was going to be getting in the ring again, just sort of like an amendment to it. But it's ostensibly the same contract, I believe.
Yeah. Awesome. William, over to you.
Absolutely. So for obviously your whole career and stuff like that, what's the best piece of advice you've been given?
Without a doubt, it was William Regal watching my match at the Brian Pillman Memorial event. Would have been 2000, 2001. 2001 it would have been, because he did 2000, the year prior. And sort of I went up to him beforehand. I said, I'm having a match, would you be good enough to watch it and give me some pointers? And a lot of people, you'll ask that, and they'll either watch it and go, yeah, it's fine, But he actually went out there during the show, sat there, watched the entire match, didn't sign autographs, made sure he was paying attention. And then he came to the back, and I'll never forget. He always told me, he said, well, when I started, I wasn't very good either. It took me about 6 years to get good. But he says, as a British wrestler, if you're going to be a British wrestler, certainly in America, you have to wrestle a British style. You've got to know that. And I started in America, learning sort of with Les Thatcher in the HWA, which is a great place to learn in terms of psychology, in terms of tag team wrestling. Les did a lot of tag team wrestling as well, in terms of being a professional and the respect for the business that he instilled in me. But to your point, to your question, if I hadn't learnt that British style, I wouldn't have had the career that I had, So William Regal was good enough to not only give me that advice, but he reached out to Brian Dixon, who was running All Star Wrestling over there, and got me booked on those tours, and that set me in the right direction. So that's definitely the best advice I've been given. In terms of the best advice that I might give, because I do seminars a lot and people ask me, it's always be different. It's always stand out. It's always, if you watch this show, why am I the one person that people are going to go home talking about? Is it the in-ring? Is it that style? Or is it a promo? Or is it how I carry myself? And I don't know what the answer to that question is, but that's a question that perhaps everybody has to answer before they get to the top echelons of the job.
Okay. John, up to you, bro.
Nigel, have you ever thought about producing for AEW?
No. I've done pretty much everything there is to do when it comes to wrestling, from setting up the ring, selling the merchandise in the early shows, and even booking shows. I mentioned Les Thatcher. He and I did this promotion, a tournament of such called Race for the Ring in like 2013, 2014, something that I'm very, very proud of. Not just getting to work with Les, but being able to put the matches and the shows together. And it was very, very different, and still holds up, I think. And there's some great talents on the show, great storylines that we did as well in terms of the in-ring, certainly. But so in that, I guess there was some agenting, producing that I did, but obviously on a much smaller scale, and not being on TV, there's none of that pressure as well. But to your question, no, I haven't thought about it, because I'm perfectly happy, and I think my best use is on commentary and as the occasional wrestler. An agent's job and a producer's job is arguably a thankless task. Certainly was when I worked in WWE. In AEW, I think they're a little bit more respected, certainly, but it's harder because you've got a lot of people involved. You've got a lot of chefs, a lot of bosses to please, and that's a really tough job to do. I don't think I'd certainly not my best asset.
Awesome. Over to you, Liam.
So you mentioned Bryan Dixon, and one of the fan questions we got was actually your relationship with Bryan Dixon.
Yeah, we had a lovely relationship. I mean, it was always fun. You know, he liked booking me on shows, and Bryan had a good sense of what made a good show in terms of what he called showing out, or the shall eyes. Have you ever heard of the shall eyes or not?
I have not, no.
If you're a baby face and you're about to give the heel his comeuppance, he'd like to hear you, before you do it, go, shall I? And then the fans would go, hey! And then you give them. It just gets the fans into it, you know. And Bryan would always, he'd make most of his money selling merch. So he'd be out on the merch stand most of the time. We didn't even watch the matches, but he could hear the matches. And so the more noise that the crowd was giving, the better the match was in his opinion. And there was certainly something to that, you know. And as a guy that loved Mark Rocco, you know, that certainly, you know, Rocco was one of the guys that got the fans completely riled up, you know, always on the go. So we had a great relationship, and I have a good relationship with Tish, Bryan's daughter, who was doing the ring announcing at the time, and so many other people who worked for the company as well. After I'd stopped working for him and I'd go back for various different companies, I would always try and pop over and see him, and we'd go out for his favorite Chinese place and sort of catch up and talk about things. And it was nice. It was lovely. Yeah, good guy.
Absolutely. John, over to you, bro.
Ryan, who would you say your wrestling soulmate is?
Yeah, fuck, I don't know. I mean, soulmate would imply that you like him, right? And so I can't put Bryan Danielson in that category. It's hard to say, really. You know, I've been getting in the ring with Lee Moriarty so often now that we have that sort of a visceral, telepathic relationship, if you will. You know, like if you could say, get in the ring with somebody now and have a match, probably would be Lee Moriarty, because we just, you know, we have similar sort of styles, and you know, he's at the stage where he can take control of a match as well. So I'd put Lee certainly in that conversation. I always remember you just don't know oftentimes how you're going to connect with a guy. I remember when I was at TNA, and these were in the weaning days, my last days there before everything went so fucking terrible at the end. And I wasn't booked on the show, but I was sat in the locker room, and they sent someone in because they needed an extra match, I think. And so they just pointed to me, and Stevie Richards was there as well, and said, Nigel, Stevie, go. We need 7 minutes now. You're up, or whatever. You know, you're on now. And we literally had the time it took for us to get changed. I mean, and then get to the Gorilla and go out there to talk. And we went out there and had a match that I'm very, very proud of, and speaks to what a talent, you know, Stevie Richards is, you know, that ability to just do stuff ad lib, if you will, you know, and also gives you a sense of, you can't do that if you don't know the other guys on the show, if you don't know what they do and what their strengths and their weaknesses are. So I in that moment, I felt a kinship to Stevie as well, certainly.
Awesome. William, over to you, man.
Absolutely. So another fan question we got was, if you didn't do a commentary, what occupation would you do instead?
Yeah, I always thought I probably would have been some kind of artist, in the sense of an actor or a writer. I mean, I have done a few things. I've written a 6-episode dramedy based on sort of like an independent professional wrestling show back in 2006 in California, that suddenly decides it's going to stop doing professional wrestling and start doing shoot fights, because UFC's getting good. So they get all these guys who aren't particularly trained in mixed martial arts and throw them out there and have these shoot fights, you know, and sort of having this as an evolution of professional wrestling, and more importantly, how it can be done on a much smaller scale. So that was called Not Race for the Ring. That was called LA Fights. I did that back in 2012, 2013. So I'd probably be some kind of writer or some kind of actor. Certainly wouldn't have a normal job. I don't know, I've got it around here somewhere now, but in my time when I stopped wrestling full time and ostensibly had retired, I tried to get regular jobs. I tried to get a job at Trader Joe's and Starbucks and Trader Joe's. I mean, it's here in California, and pretty much they'll hire anybody. And yet, when I went for the job, they sent me a letter saying, unfortunately, we're not going to ask you even in for an interview. So I know if I did anything wrong, or I know what happened, but I stuck that on my wall at the time because I just realized I'm just not suited for a normal life, a normal job. I'm going to have to do something different. So that's why I was very grateful that WWE came back around when they did and gave me that opportunity.
Okay. John, up to you, bro.
What would you say, Nigel, is the most rewarding thing about being a professional wrestler is?
The connection with some of the fans, certainly, through the highs and the lows of my career. And I've been very open with the things that have happened to me. It's given me a chance to connect with people around the world and form friendships. I mentioned Chris Brooker before, who's a fantastic comedian and compere, connecting with him. And then there was a fellow who reached out to me. God, this would have been around the time of my documentary, my retirement tour. Because I don't know if you watched the documentary, but William Regal said it was right up there with Schindler's List. Not in terms of Oscar worthiness, but in terms of how depressing it was. But because of that, to me, that was my story to tell at the time as well, because there aren't that many of those stories. There's lots of stories about people who never give up and make it, but not that many stories about people that never give up and don't. And there's something to be learned from the latter, because arguably more people are going to experience that in life than the other way around. There's going to be more Nigel McGuinnesses than there are Bryan Danielsons. Thank God. So that being the case, I did the documentary, and there was a fellow who reached out from England, and he told me that he and his mother had been wrestling fans in the late 80s, late 90s, early 2000s, been WWF sort of Attitude Era fans. And in the early 2000s, he had sort of discovered Ring of Honor through DVDs or wherever it was you'd watch back in those days. And his mum had come in and seen it and had seen me. And I was like one of her favorite wrestlers, apparently. And so, unfortunately, she'd had a stroke. And after the stroke, and she'd lost a lot of her ability to communicate or whatever else. But he'd said that talking about me and Ring of Honor was one of those things that they could connect on. And to know that you've had that sort of positive experience or influence, rather, on someone's life is such a blessing, to make the world a better place, even just for such a insular or singular thing as that. They say, be the world to someone or someone to the world, because it's hard to be both, right? And I think that's what people in the public eye often struggle with. Yeah.
Obviously, Lim.
Obviously. So, obviously, being involved in wrestling and stuff like that, is it hard to be like a wrestling fan?
For me?
Yes.
Is it hard for me to still be a fan? Yeah, I think so. I think most people who are in the job and do it for a living probably become jaded and probably lose some of that magic. Every now and again, you'll be reminded. I mentioned Joe and Kobashi. I mentioned that Clam Digger as well. Every now and again, there'll be a moment where you just get shuttled back to that time before you knew how everything worked and became so jaded, and you're like, this is why I wanted to do this. This is the magic, you know what I mean? And you can certainly make a very good argument, as I talked about with social media, that people being so smart to it now and trying to analyze this and dissect it, you lose that sense of wonder and magic and passion of just sitting down and watching something. And everybody's obviously entitled to their opinion. You don't have to like a product if you don't like a product, but if you don't like something, I've always said, just turn it off. Just watch something else. If you're spending your energy being negative about why something sucks, you're just propagating that in the world. And I think it's not so much karma, but it's just, what you put into the world is what comes back to you. So I always just try and take a positive slant on things.
Okay. John, over to you, bro.
So obviously you did a tag match with Daniel Garcia and FTR, and it was kind of a little tease of a heel turn from Daniel, but we now know he's done it and joined the Death Riders. What is your opinion on
that? The match, or
just him turning heel?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who's struggled, certainly storyline wise, but I did a video after or as he was pursuing the TNT title. He showed his relationship with his mother and a few other people behind the scenes as well. And I think he's of a generation that has struggled for, I guess, self-belief. Even when he became the TNT champion, I think he felt he hadn't reached that upper echelon. We talk about imposter syndrome. A lot of performers, whether it's professional wrestling or actors or singers, have that sense of, internally that voice going, fuck, I hope people don't realize I'm not as good at this as they think I am, and I think that's certainly part of his generation, potentially, and that's why someone like Jon Moxley would appeal to him so much, the Death Riders. So yeah, I think, don't agree with it. I think he's probably would have been better for him to try to stick in terms with the direction he was going and find that moment. But we've all got to go on these different journeys, right?
William, over to you.
So where do you see the wrestling business in the next few years?
I think it continue going on as successful as it is. I mean, we don't want to get down into the weeds. Obviously, our product is different than WWE's product is, and going in different directions. There are different mindsets, certainly, but we both have our fan bases, and I think I'd like to see them both continue to grow that. I think we'll look back on this time period, now in the next few years, to your point, as being, a golden era, golden age, if you will, halcyon days, in terms of the professional wrestling industry, in terms of how many jobs there were, how many people were making a living from this, and the opportunity for me personally at my age to get back in the ring on that sort of stage, to do it at the O2 Arena, Wembley Stadium, to go to Australia, travel all around the world and see that and have that level of connection with fans as well. It's I think things will continue to go strength to strength. Certainly hope to see it.
Awesome. So the final few questions, Nigel. So before you hang up the boots, who is one person that you want to step in the ring with?
Oof. Yeah, that's a good one. That is. I'd love to face Lee again. We're 1-1 so far. He beat me for the pure title in December of last year, and then I tapped him out in that 4-way to get the opportunity against Zack. I'd certainly love to see the match with, but I don't want a fantasy book. I don't want a fantasy book when that's not my job. You know what I mean? I'm open to a lot of guys. Adam Copeland called me a human goiter. I didn't realize there were other kinds of goiters. I thought humans were the only ones. I don't know if there's cattle goiter, but either way, he's been very disrespectful. He shouted down at me a couple of times on commentary. So, maybe he's got one coming back to him. I don't know.
That would be a dream, wouldn't it, for you?
All right.
That would be, probably like 10 years ago, it probably would have never happened. But now like a dream come true for you.
It's incredible. It's incredible. If you just said to me 5-10 years ago, me and Zack Sabre Jr. at the O2 Arena, I'd have been, you're out of your mind. Never going to happen, And then it did. So, what dreams may come, you never know what's around the corner. That's it. I'm a bit of a determinist, fellas. Do you know what determinism is?
No.
It's a philosophy that free will is an illusion, and the whole history of the universe and everything in it is completely predetermined, from the color of socks you choose to wear in the morning to whoever you choose to spend your life with. It seems like you have a choice, but ultimately you really had no choice. And so because of that, I believe that everything that happens in life is, it's predetermined, it's destiny. It's like a book. You're just reading it one page at a time, and that doesn't take away any of the heartache or the joy from reading that book. But for me, that's just how I see the world. And that being the case, I'm just very, very, very grateful that I got to experience all the things I've got to experience so far.
Awesome. So I know we're in September, but this will probably go out in 1 or 2 days' time. Mm-hmm. Who would you say currently right now is the one to watch, male and female, for 2026 for AEW?
Oh, I can't choose one. That would do a disservice, certainly. I'd like to hedge my bets, so to speak. I think Tekla has got an incredible presence. And if she's able to get the right matches and the right decisions, I think she could do incredibly well. I think that Carl Fletcher is already jettisoning as the TNT champion. I think he's got almost limitless, potential. And then, I have just picked two then, haven't I, really? There's the two that immediately jumped out at me. Certainly is two people that stand out. But that's the beauty of AEW, is we have such depth in both, male and female roster, that there's plenty of people that can jump up and grab those brass rings, if you will, smash through the glass ceiling.
Literally. So who is your Mount Rushmore?
For Ring of Honor or professional wrestling in general?
Professional wrestling.
Oh, God. How many people are on Mount Rushmore? As British people, we're okay if we don't know, but I think it's 5. Is it 5? Is that what you're giving me, 5?
We'll go with 5.
Yeah, and then does it become a question of, who are the biggest draws or who were the best workers, which I hate that term. I can tell you who they are in terms of who I've enjoyed watching. Certainly Bret Hart has got to be on the Mount Rushmore, I think, in terms of bell to bell, in terms of how he held himself as both a wrestler and a champion and a man. I think he'd certainly have to be on it. Fit Finlay, for me personally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they say never meet your heroes, but Fit Finlay is a man who just his authenticity, and the respect that he gets from people and has earned. And in terms of in the ring as well, was a guy that could just do the job. Could do the job easily. And then as a wild card, Santino Marella. When I wasn't in wrestling anymore and I'd retired, he was the one person that I would stop and watch because he was just so entertaining. I just think he's fantastic. And there's a guy that bell to bell could kick half the roster's ass as well, So just again, in terms of me personally, I'd put him on there, certainly. And then, what have we got? 2 more, right? Ooh, who would I go with? Yeah, I guess I'd put Joe on there as well. Samoa Joe, yeah, just in terms of how important he was for Ring of Honor, but the respect that he has, not only for the job, but, everybody backstage as well. And that sort of thing. And then I think just because he's my boss, and without him, I wouldn't have had the chance to get back in the ring. I wouldn't have had the chance to, probably save up enough money to try to retire. For me personally, I just put Tony Khan on there because of what he's done for so many people, but specifically for me as well. So it's a bit of a hodgepodge, but there you go. There's Mount Rushmore of Nigel McGuinness's influences and or fandom in professional wrestling.
Awesome. So the final question is over to you, Liam.
Yeah, so we always like to end on stuff like that. I mean, how do you want to be remembered, Nigel?
I think as a kind, friendly person who did his best and tried to be a positive influence for people who have a dream. That was always my thought of pursuing my dream to be a professional wrestler, is I wanted to prove that if you have a dream and you never give up, that you can make it. And I've learned through doing that that's not always true. You can have a dream and never give up and just not be good enough to do it. That's the bottom line, So it's obviously a cliche to talk about. It's all about the journey, not the destination. But those cliches are true for a reason. That those stereotypes are true. So I think, in terms of that, I'd just like to be a positive influence on other people that dreamt of leading a life less ordinary. It's not only in wrestling. I've tried to do it outside the ring as well, with mixed results. But that's life, right? I mean, that is life, and we all have these opportunities. And I just, I'd like to be a positive influence in people having the self-belief to choose the road less traveled.
Absolutely. Jordan, you want to obviously wind the show down?
Well, Nigel, so I know we've gone over by a few, but I do apologize for that. But honestly, thank you from myself for coming on, because I'm going to tell you, I'm a massive fan of yours, and not just your commentary, but your matches with Daniel, your Ring of Honor days, your AEW. I'm glad to see you back in the ring as well, even though if it is every so often, as you would say. But a big shout out to yourself for coming on. Big shout out for AEW allowing this to happen, and a big shout out to Scott. Thank you. I appreciate it. So, Liam, just over to you to say a little bit, and then we'll end it.
Absolutely. So one thing we always like to admit, is there anything else you'd like to plug?
Well, of course, AEW and the upcoming shows, Collisions on Saturday nights over here. Where do you see it in the UK? You probably should plug it over there as well, right?
ITV.
ITV, yes. So you can watch it over there on ITV. Keep supporting the product in that regard. We're coming back over in December, I believe, right? We've got a show
December 17th.
Wales and Manchester. So pack those places out, and you never know, if you're a big Nigel McGuinness fan, maybe there'll be another match in me yet, and then our pay-per-views as well. We've got Wrestle Dream coming up, an I Quit match with Darby Allin and John Moxley, as well as AEW. Always, top to bottom of the card pay-per-view, you're going to get your money's worth. No question about that. So just keep supporting that, and it's very important. It's very important that people have places to work and to wrestle, and to keep evolving this thing called pro wrestling that we all fell in love with, and for the unfortunate majority of us has become a lifelong romance.
Nigel, honestly, thank you on behalf of me and Liam. I really do appreciate your time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
No worries. Keep on wombling.